Family, let me tell you something loud and clear. There are some women that darkness dares not touch. Evil trembles when she walks into the room, not because of who she is in the flesh, but because of the power, the covering, and the authority that she carries. When a woman is wrapped in the hand of God, hell itself recognizes it. Today, I want to show you 5 undeniable signs that evil fears this kind of woman. Let me tell you something powerful. There is nothing more dangerous to the kingdom of darkness than a woman who knows who she is. Not who the world says she is, not who her critics say she is, not who her past says she is, but who she is in the eyes of the living God. That's where her strength lies. That's where her boldness comes from. That's where her victory begins. See, the enemy's first tactic is always identity theft. He wants to convince you that you are less than who you really are. He wants to label you with failure, with insecurity, with fear. He wants you to think you're just ordinary, just another person blending into the background of life. But when a woman discovers her true identity, the battle shifts. Because once she knows who she is, she can no longer be deceived by who she isn't. Some of you have been living under labels that never belonged to you. Somebody called you weak, but you are strong. Somebody told you that you are unworthy, but you are chosen. Somebody said you are broken beyond repair, but you are healed and whole. You've been carrying words that don't line up with the truth of who you are. And here's the hook. Evil fears the moment you rip those false labels off and replace them with the truth. When a woman declares, I know I am not defined by my past, I am defined by my purpose, the ground shakes. When she says, I know I am not a victim of circumstance, I am a victor through Christ, the atmosphere shifts. When she looks in the mirror and doesn't just see her flaws, but sees the fingerprints of God all over her life, she becomes unstoppable. Evil thrives in confusion, but it flees from clarity. And clarity comes when you recognize your divine identity. That's why the attack on women has always been so fierce. Because if the enemy can keep you doubting yourself, questioning your worth, and second-guessing your calling, then you'll never step into the authority you already carry. But the moment you understand, the moment it clicks, the moment you look around and say, wait a minute, I am not who they said I was. I am who God says I am. That is the moment evil gets nervous. Let me give you a picture. A lioness doesn't apologize for being a lioness. She doesn't shrink back to please the gazelles around her. She knows who she is. She knows what she carries. She walks with confidence because her identity is undeniable. In the same way, when a woman of God knows who she is, she doesn't have to roar to prove it. Her very presence speaks. Her very steps shake the ground. Evil fears her not because she is loud, but because she is certain. And certainty is a weapon. Confidence rooted in God's truth is a fortress the enemy cannot penetrate. Evil can mess with someone who doubts, but it can't touch a woman who declares, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I am chosen. I am redeemed. I am called for such a time as this. That kind of confidence isn't arrogance, it's authority. It's not pride, it's position. It's not self-made, it's God-ordained. Some of you need to stop introducing yourselves the way the world taught you to, and start introducing yourselves the way heaven already sees you. Stop saying, I'm just trying to get by, and start saying, I am more than a conqueror. Stop saying, I'm just average, and start saying, I am a daughter of the King. Stop saying, I'm not enough, and start saying, I am equipped for every good work. Evil fears the woman who walks into every room, not searching for validation, but carrying confirmation. She doesn't wait for someone else to tell her who she is. She already knows. She walks tall, she speaks bold, she lives free. And because she knows her identity, she cannot be manipulated, she cannot be bought, and she cannot be broken. Listen closely, because this is where the battle gets real. The enemy knows if he can't steal your identity, he will try to poison your heart. He will whisper lies. He will stir up bitterness. He will plant seeds of doubt, jealousy, and unforgiveness. Why? Because he understands that if he can contaminate the heart, he can contaminate the life. But there's a kind of woman who knows how to guard her heart, and that's the kind of woman evil fears. Your heart is the control center of your life. Every decision, every relationship, every action flows from it. That's why the word says, above all else, guard your heart. Not sometimes, not when it's easy, but above everything. Because the moment your heart is left unguarded, you become vulnerable to the enemy's schemes. And that's the hook right here. Evil cannot penetrate what is properly protected. A woman who guards her heart doesn't let just anything take root in her spirit. She's careful about what she allows into her ears, into her mind, into her conversations. She understands that words are seeds, and not every seed deserves soil. When gossip tries to sneak in, she shuts the door. When lies try to creep in, she answers with truth. When bitterness tries to rise, she pulls it up from the root before it can grow. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's not fear, that's strategy. The enemy thrives on an unguarded heart. So he loves it when you replay old wounds, when you nurse grudges, when you feed anger. Because every time you do, the fortress around your heart weakens. But when a woman makes the decision, I will not carry offense, I will not live in unforgiveness, I will not let my spirit be polluted, she becomes untouchable. That's the woman evil dreads because she knows that a clean heart is a powerful heart. Think about this, a poisoned well can't provide clean water, no matter how much you want it to. In the same way, a heart poisoned with lies can't pour out truth. A heart filled with bitterness can't pour out love. A heart infected with fear can't pour out courage. That's why guarding the heart is not optional. It's essential. And when a woman takes this seriously, evil loses its grip. Imagine walking into a room with a shield so strong that negativity can't stick to you. That's what happens when your heart is guarded. People may try to throw shade, but it doesn't land. Circumstances may try to break you, but they don't succeed. Disappointments may come, but they don't define you. Why? Because your heart is locked in truth, and truth cannot be shaken. Evil doesn't fear the woman who shouts the loudest. Evil fears the woman who silently protects her peace. The one who refuses to let toxicity invade her inner world. The one who knows that what she carries inside is too precious to leave unprotected. She's not careless with her emotions. She's not reckless with her thoughts. She's not lazy with her spirit. She is alert. She is disciplined. She is guarded. And guarding your heart doesn't mean you're hard. It doesn't mean you're cold. It doesn't mean you're unreachable. It means you are intentional about what you allow to shape you. It means you filter everything through truth before you let it settle inside of you. It means you refuse to let temporary pain create permanent damage. That's the kind of strength that scares the enemy. Because once your heart is sealed in truth, there is no entry point for his lies. Some of you right now need to hear this. You've been giving too much access to people who don't deserve the keys to your heart. You've been opening the door to voices that are tearing you down instead of building you up. And the hook is this. When you learn to guard your heart, you don't become weaker, you become wiser. You don't lose love, you gain freedom. You don't shut people out, you shut evil out. Let me tell you something that evil cannot handle. It cannot handle a woman who stands on unshakable faith. Evil feeds on fear, but faith starves it to death. Evil thrives when you panic, but it shrinks when you trust. And when a woman plants her feet and declares, I may not see the way, but I know the one who makes the way, that's when hell begins to tremble. Faith is not a feeling. Faith is a decision. Feelings shift like the wind up one moment, down the next. But faith is a rock. Faith doesn't crumble under pressure. It doesn't fold in the storm. It doesn't retreat when the battle intensifies. Faith says, I'm not walking by what I see, I'm walking by what I know. And here's the hook. When a woman walks by faith, she doesn't follow the news, she doesn't follow the noise, she follows the voice of God that speaks louder than the chaos around her. The enemy's favorite weapon is fear. He whispers, what if you fail? What if they leave? What if you lose everything? He tries to paint your future with shadows so you'll stop moving forward. But a woman of faith looks fear in the face and says, even if I walk through the valley of the shadow, I will not be afraid. She understands that fear is a shadow, but faith is the substance. Fear is an illusion, but faith is reality. Fear says you can't, But faith says, watch me. When storms rise, when the winds blow, when the ground shakes, evil expects you to collapse. But the woman of faith doesn't collapse. She plants her feet deeper. She doesn't deny the storm, she defies it. She says, I may be surrounded, but I am not defeated. I may be pressed, but I am not crushed. I may be shaken, but I will not be moved. Evil doesn't know what to do with that kind of resolve. Faith is not loud for attention. Faith is steady for survival. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. But even a whisper of faith is stronger than the loudest shout of fear. That's why evil fears the praying mother who refuses to give up on her children. That's why evil fears the daughter who refuses to accept defeat. That's why evil fears the wife who keeps standing when everything around her says quit. Because her faith becomes a shield that stops every arrow the enemy tries to send. And here's the truth, faith is contagious. When one woman decides to stand on faith, she raises the level for everyone around her. Her children catch it, her family feels it, her community sees it. Evil knows if she keeps standing, others will rise too. That's why the attack on her faith is so intense, because her faith doesn't just protect her, it inspires armies. Let me paint a picture. Imagine a soldier holding a shield. Arrows are flying, fire is blazing, the battlefield is chaotic. Most would drop the shield and run. But this soldier plants her feet, holds the shield higher, and refuses to back down. That's the woman of unshakable faith. She may get tired, she may feel pressure, but she won't let go. She understands that her shield is her lifeline. Evil can't penetrate it, fear can't override it, doubt can't dismantle it. And don't miss this. Faith doesn't remove the storm. Faith carries you through the storm. Evil wants you to think faith means everything will be easy. No, faith means even when it's hard, you still keep moving. Even when it doesn't make sense, you still keep walking. Even when it hurts, you still keep believing. Evil doesn't fear convenience, it fears consistency. It fears the woman who refuses to quit, no matter how long it takes. Some of you need to hear this today. You've been letting fear write the script of your life. You've been letting worry dictate your decisions. But fear is a liar, and faith is the truth. Fear magnifies the problem, but faith magnifies the solution. Fear says, look at the size of the giant. But faith says, look at the size of my God. That's the hook. Evil will always exaggerate the giant because it knows if you ever truly see your God, the battle is already over. There is one thing that evil cannot stand. One thing that makes the enemy scatter. One thing that shakes the gates of hell every time a woman opens her mouth, and that is prayer. Evil can fight against talent. It can resist effort. It can even push back against human strength. But it cannot stand against a praying woman. Because when she prays, she is no longer fighting in her own power. She is fighting in heaven's power. The enemy fears prayer because prayer is not a ritual, prayer is a weapon. It is not empty words floating into the air. It is a declaration that heaven is being invited into the battle. That's the hook. When a woman prays, she shifts the atmosphere. She doesn't just talk to God, she brings God's presence into her situation. And the enemy knows he cannot stand in the same place where God shows up. See, evil wants you to think prayer is weak. It wants you to think it's just quiet whispers in a room with no effect. But if prayer were weak, the enemy wouldn't fight so hard to keep you from doing it. Why is it that every time you make up your mind to pray, distractions show up, your phone rings, your thoughts wander, your schedule suddenly fills up? Because the enemy knows if you ever take prayer seriously, his plans for you will collapse. A praying woman doesn't wait until the crisis is unbearable. She goes to war before the battle even begins. She prays over her children before they step out the door. She prays over her marriage before the arguments come. She prays over her future before the storm arrives. Evil hates her consistency because her prayers are like fire building momentum. And when the fire gets hot enough, chains start breaking. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a dark room, silent and heavy. But then a woman opens her mouth and begins to pray. Her words are like lightning piercing the darkness. Her voice may tremble, her tears may fall, but every word is like a hammer striking the walls of hell. She may not see the results instantly, but in the unseen realm, strongholds are cracking, chains are loosening, doors are opening. That's the power of prayer. Evil doesn't mind if you talk about your problems. It only trembles when you pray about them. Evil doesn't care if you complain, but it fears when you declare. Evil isn't threatened by your size, but it runs when you cry out with authority. That's the hook. Your power isn't in what you say to people. Your power is in what you say to heaven. And don't miss this. Prayer isn't just asking, it's aligning. A woman who prays doesn't just dump her problems on God. She positions herself under his will. She says, not my way, but yours. And when she does that, she becomes unstoppable. Because now her prayers aren't just her words, they are heaven's agenda being released through her voice. A praying woman is not to be underestimated. She may look ordinary on the outside, but when she closes that door, drops to her knees, and begins to call on the name of the Lord, she becomes a warrior. Her tears are weapons. Her whispers are warfare. Her groans are declarations. Evil knows that when she prays, angels are dispatched, miracles are activated, and victories are sealed. Think about this. The most dangerous place for evil is not a courtroom, not a battlefield, not a stage. The most dangerous place for evil is the prayer closet of a determined woman, because that's where battles are won before they ever show up in the natural. That's where generational curses are broken. That's where protection is declared. That's where destiny is preserved. Some of you have been under attack, not because you are weak, but because your prayers are powerful. The enemy knows the sound of your voice in heaven. He knows that when you pray, things shift. And that's why he tries to wear you down, keep you silent, keep you distracted. But if you ever realize that your prayers carry the power to shake nations, to protect families, to transform futures, then you will never stay silent again. Evil thrives in darkness, but it cannot survive in the presence of light. And there is nothing more dangerous to darkness than a woman who refuses to hide her light. Evil doesn't fear the shadows, it lives there. Evil doesn't fear silence, it feeds there. But when a woman walks into the room carrying light, unapologetic and bold, the shadows scatter, the silence breaks, and the atmosphere shifts. That's why evil fears her, because she doesn't dim herself to fit in. She shines to stand out. The enemy will always try to convince you to hide your light. He will tell you, don't speak up, don't stand out, don't be different. Stay quiet, stay small, stay unseen. Why? Because he knows that if you shine, someone else will see hope. If you shine, someone else will find courage. If you shine, someone else will remember that darkness doesn't have the final word. That's the hook. The enemy doesn't just fear your light for you, he fears your light for everyone watching you. Light doesn't argue with darkness. Light doesn't negotiate with darkness. Light doesn't even try to explain itself. Light simply shows up and darkness flees. That's the power you carry when you shine without apology. You don't need to debate. You don't need to prove. You don't need to justify. Your life, your presence, your example becomes the evidence. Some of you have been dimming your light to make others comfortable. You've been shrinking your dreams, silencing your voice, hiding your gifts because you are afraid of being too much. But let me tell you this. Evil doesn't fear a quiet, hidden woman. Evil fears a radiant, visible woman. The one who says, I will not hide what God put inside me. I will not silence what heaven has spoken through me. I will not bury the light that was given to me for the world. Light has a way of drawing people in. It exposes what's hidden, but it also guides the lost. Evil hates that, because the moment you shine, those trapped in darkness suddenly see a way out. That's why your smile matters, your voice matters, your testimony matters. Every time you shine, you give someone else permission to believe that they can too. Picture a lighthouse standing tall on a stormy night. The waves are crashing, the winds are howling, the sea is dangerous. But that lighthouse doesn't move. It doesn't hide. It doesn't apologize. It shines. And because it shines, sailors find their way home. That's what a woman of light does. She may not even realize how many lives she's guiding, how many souls she's saving, how many people are watching her courage. But evil knows. Evil knows one shining woman can lead an entire generation out of darkness. And here's what makes it more powerful. Your light doesn't come from you, it comes through you. That's why it cannot be extinguished. People can criticize you, but they can't dim you. Circumstances can hit you, but they can't stop you. Storms can surround you, but they can't silence you. Your light doesn't depend on approval, it depends on the source. And as long as the source is alive, your light will keep burning. Evil wants you to think shining is arrogance, but shining is obedience. You were not designed to blend in, you were created to stand out. You were not placed here to be invisible, you were sent here to be impactful. Every gift, every talent, every word, every act of kindness is a beam of light in a dark world. And when you choose to let it shine without apology, you declare war on darkness without even lifting a hand. That's why evil doesn't want you confident. That's why it wants you insecure. That's why it wants you comparing yourself to others. Because insecurity makes you cover your light. But the moment you realize your light doesn't need comparison, it just needs to shine, the battle turns in your favor. That's the hook. Darkness doesn't care if you exist, it only cares if you shine. There is nothing more terrifying to evil than a woman who knows her purpose and refuses to apologize for it. The enemy doesn't mind if you wander, he doesn't mind if you doubt, he doesn't even mind if you waste your time chasing what doesn't matter. But the moment you discover why you were born, why you were chosen, why you were placed on this earth, that's when the battle changes. Because purpose is power, purpose is direction, purpose is fuel. And when a woman walks in purpose, she cannot be stopped. Evil will always try to distract you from your purpose. It will whisper, you're not qualified, you're not ready, you're not enough. It will throw obstacles in your path, not because you're weak, but because you're dangerous. That's the hook. Opposition is not a sign you're failing. It's a sign you're a threat. The very reason the enemy is fighting you so hard is because he knows the impact you will have when you fully step into your calling. A woman walking in purpose doesn't chase applause. She doesn't need validation. She doesn't live for likes, recognition, or approval. She lives for alignment. She knows her life has an assignment, and she will not be distracted by noise. She's not running in circles, trying to please everybody. She's walking a straight path laid out by the one who called her. Evil fears her because she's focused, and focus is lethal to the enemy. Think about an arrow. If it's loose, if it's aimless, it's harmless. But if it's pulled back, pointed, and released with precision, it pierces the target. That's what a woman of purpose is. Sharp, focused, intentional. Evil may try to delay her, but it cannot deny her. Because when purpose is pulling you forward, nothing can hold you back. Some of you have been living in survival mode, just trying to make it day by day. But you weren't born to survive, you were born to serve a greater purpose. You weren't designed just to exist, you were designed to make an impact. And here's the truth. Evil fears impact. Evil fears the ripple effect of one woman who dares to walk boldly in her assignment. Because when she does, she doesn't just change her own life. She changes families, communities, and generations. Walking in purpose doesn't mean life gets easy. It means life gets meaningful. Evil will still try to distract, discourage, and derail you. But when you know why you're here, you stop letting obstacles stop you. You see every setback as a setup. Every delay as direction. Every closed door as protection. You stop living frustrated and start living focused. And that's exactly what the enemy fears. A woman who cannot be shaken off her path. Purpose gives you boldness. When you know why you're here, you stop apologizing for existing. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop explaining yourself to people who will never understand. Instead, you rise up and say, this is who I am, this is why I'm here, and this is what I'm called to do. Evil fears that kind of confidence because it knows you won't be manipulated, distracted, or silenced. Picture a runner in a race. The crowd is shouting, some cheering, some criticizing, some trying to distract. But the runner keeps her eyes on the finish line. She doesn't waste energy turning left or right. She doesn't stop to argue with the voices. She keeps running toward her goal. That's what walking in purpose looks like. And evil knows as long as you keep running your race, you will cross the finish line with victory. Purpose is not about being perfect. It's about being persistent. It's about knowing that even if you stumble, you still move forward. Even if you fall, you still get up. Even if you face resistance, you still press on. Evil fears the woman who refuses to give up, because her very persistence becomes a testimony that inspires others to rise. And once her life starts inspiring others, her impact multiplies beyond anything the enemy can contain.